Greetings, greetings, greetings to my fellow Hiccup heroes across the world. Welcome to another episode of the Hiccups and Healing Podcast, the ultimate destination for anyone navigating the tumultuous waters of high conflict co-parenting. I'm your host, Sadie Sadiq Cisse, and I'm excited because we have a very special episode in store for you today. We're going to be talking about how high conflict and co-parenting relationships can often be linked to personal issues that we might not even be aware of. But with self-reflection and personal growth, it's possible to improve these relationships and create a healthier dynamic for everyone involved. Recently, I had a conversation with a woman who shared her experience with high conflict co-parenting. She had noticed that she had been contributing to the problem without even realizing it, and her message was quite powerful. During our conversation, I asked the woman about her experience with high conflict co-parenting, and she responded with a heartfelt reflection. She shared how she had found herself feeling like the mad black women stereotype that she had always heard about, but never imagined becoming. Through self-reflection, she realized that the stress and emotional toll of all the conflict had caused her to act in ways that were not in line with her true self. As a result, she was motivated to rewrite the narrative for herself, her children, and ultimately her co-parent. As she continued to reflect on her own actions and the impact they have or may have had on her co-parent, she came to the realization that she needed to make changes in order to move forward and co-parent more effectively. The woman didn't intentionally give a message during our conversation. She was simply reflecting on her own personal experience and growth. However, I found her story to be a powerful reminder of the importance of self-reflection and taking responsibility for our actions, even in difficult and emotionally charged situations. By being willing to look honestly at ourselves and make changes where necessary, we can become better parents and build stronger relationships with our co-parents. And now, with that being said, let's have a listen to what she had to say. So what is the root of the conflict that you're experiencing with your co-parent at the moment? And how old is your daughter now? Is it a high conflict co-parenting situation with both of your co-parents, or is it just with one? How is that dynamic for you? And what role, if we're being honest with ourselves in our healing process, if we really want, certain changes to manifest, we do have to be able to be real with ourselves as well. But I ask you, what role have you played in the conflict?
Those are very direct questions, but honest. And it gives me opportunity to sit here and chop these onions up and really think about it. But I think one of the main things that's always under attack on both sides for the man and woman, our minds. Our minds. We're already functioning from imbalance. And let me try to explain that. I just think that man and woman were created together. We were meant to function together. And if for so long, for years, hundreds of years, there's been a physical element that pulled that concept apart, that pulled the man and woman apart forcefully, that tortured, that just stomped and stepped on and you know what I'm saying? For so long, eventually we mentally learn to do the same things to ourselves. So you see cycles of trauma repeating because it's almost like we're stuck and we don't know how to get out. We're stuck because we don't realize the box that we've been bouncing around in for years and centuries and generations. But there's so many elements. Like a lot of us have mental illness. A lot of us have debilitating anxiety and depression and things like that. Those things that we kind of have not put focus on until now. This new generation of therapy and healing and all of that, looking at how the mind and the body, things we put inside of our body, things we're fed, drugs we're given, vaccine, all of that, how it affects us mentally. But even through all of that, I believe that it's totally possible to rewrite the narrative. But the force has to be equal or greater than what was, like the trauma, the pain. And that's the hard part. That's been hard for me because I've always felt like I was going at it on my own. I felt like I became that angry woman that I heard about. That angry black woman And I'm like, why? Where is this coming from? And I realized that it was coming from this feeling of being alone in something that like is necessary, that's needed, and that I've wanted for a long time. So I found myself divorced multiple times after making plans with a man, like, building life together. And for me, most of the time, it was a matter of the man kind of trying to figure out his way in life and just coming to the conclusion that, hey, this is not for me, type of thing. When you have situations like that, and it's just like, it's sudden. The body, the mind wasn't meant to function like that. So there's imbalances that are created. Same thing happened with my mom and dad. A man to me stands as a leader. Like, I'm following you. Like, we can make a plan together, but when it's time to move, I'm following you. That's how I view it. And when the man that you have chosen to give that power to is kind of like glitching or is kind of like, well, no, I don't want you to follow me. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, things are switching up and there's no balance. All sorts of things happen. Because the main thing the woman is looking for is security. So once you poke at a woman's security and her safety, she and her whole makeup changes. You know what I'm saying? Like, we weren't meant to function without security. So when we function without security, we function in a totally masculine energy as a protective mechanism. And it's hard to understand that, just like it's hard for women to understand mentally sometimes what men go through. I think some of my biggest problems when it comes to co-parenting is not being a good judge in character from the beginning when it comes to choosing who I create life with, but also just being so wrapped up in my own pain of like, damn, I'm really living through this. Like, I'm really out here trying to co-parent with this man. I had his baby, and blah, like the anger that comes with failing at something that I didn't. Just like in most cases, nobody's breathing, nobody's taking that time, that moment to really evaluate the situation. Like, hey, look, let's take a step back. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not me versus you. And then my thing is like, I'm never on the attack, but I'm definitely on the defense. So I think, I don't know, man. I could talk for a very, very long time about this stuff, but I have a pretty good co-parenting relationship right now with my son's father, but it's taken some time to get there. But one of the things that helped was me initiating things. So I would extend the invitation to my daughter's birthday party. I would tell him, hey, look, we've had all these issues in the past, but I've told him, like, I want to get to a point where, we're both at the birthday parties. I've initiated these conversations because that's where I am. That's mentally where I want to be. And so I believe in doing what's necessary to get there. His wife now is not always on board, but I understand patience and I understand consistency. So that's what I want for my life. And that's what I'm going to have around me. Whoever wants to get on board can get on board.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta just let that soak in for a second. You see, this woman's story really resonated with me because it highlights the importance of self-reflection and personal growth in co-parenting relationships. When we're in conflict with someone, it's easy to point the finger and blame them for everything that's going wrong. But sometimes, we need to turn that finger around and look at ourselves. If we can identify our own personal issues and work on them, we might just find that the conflict starts to dissipate. It's not always easy, but ultimately it's worth it for the sake of our children and ourselves. In high conflict co-parenting situations, it's easy, very easy, to get caught up in the cycle of blame and defensiveness. We might feel justified in our anger or frustration towards our co-parent and struggle to see past their actions or behavior. However, this kind of mindset mindset can often lead to a toxic and unproductive co-parenting relationship, which ultimately hurts our children. Now, this is why the message of self-reflection and personal growth is so important. By taking the time to reflect on our own behavior, motivations, and triggers, we can gain a better understanding of why we react the way that we do in certain situations. We can also identify areas where we might need to improve, whether it's in communication, boundary setting, or emotional regulation. When we approach co-parenting from a place of self-awareness and personal growth, we create the conditions for a more positive and productive relationship. We might find that our co-parent responds differently to us when we're no longer reacting out of our own emotional baggage. We might also discover new ways of interacting with our children that allow us to be more present and supportive. Ultimately, the journey of self-reflection and healing is a difficult but necessary one in high-conflict co-parenting situations. It requires courage, humility, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But by prioritizing our own growth and the well-being of our children, we can create a brighter future for ourselves and our children and break the cycle of conflict and pain that may have existed for generations. So that's it for today's episode on the power of self-reflection and healing in reference to high conflict co-parenting. We hope you found it helpful and informative. If you have any other tips or stories to share about co-parenting in high conflict, please leave them in the comments below, send us a DM on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more episodes like this one. Thank you. Keep healing.